Ladies and gentlemen, and variations thereupon.
Pull to open.
Yes, and what do you do?
Taking a big space truck with a bunch of strangers across a diamond planet called Midnight.
I shudder to think what might happen.
But you say that to all girls.
If you would fasten your seatbelts, we'll be leaving any moment.
Here come the drums!
So here it comes, the sound of drums. Here come the drums, here come the drums.
Hello, and welcome to Pull to Open, an ongoing quest to watch all of Doctor Who in random order. I'm Pete Pachal.
And I'm Chris Taylor, and a happy holidays and Merry Christmas to all of our listeners.
Hey, that's right. It's Christmas Day when we're uploading this.
Yeah, we're pretending it's Christmas Day. This is sort of like when they shoot a Doctor Who special in the middle of July.
Right.
And it's a Christmassy one, and we just have to pretend to be Christmassy in advance.
Luckily, we're only a week out here, so we can fake it pretty well.
we're kind of method acting here. We're kind of living it.
Yeah. Let's imagine me carving into some beef Wellington right now. Some candy canes good. All around my head. For those of you not watching on YouTube right now, see that that's not the case, and I have actually a dearth of decorations in this room.
I mean, we do know from the time of the Doctor that the TARDIS cooks a good turkey.
So that's true.
That's what I'm imagining, that we're on the deck of the TARDIS. We got the turkey cooking in the Eye of Orion, or whatever the heck it is that's powering that thing. And and we're here to talk about our latest random episode, which is somewhat holiday themed.
Right.
Which is called Midnight.
Right. We did not, as you might expect, decide to do one of the many Doctor Who holiday specials. Actually, we have done that, but not in a comprehensive way. So, well, it wasn't a comprehensive way in that we haven't officially done the holiday episodes, but our very first Pull to Open ever was rapid fire reviewing every single Christmas episode. So you can go back to the first episode of Pull to Open and get our very, very short crib notes on every holiday episode. Well, we still haven't decided. We've decided that didn't count as like doing them in the codex. So they're in the codex that we haven't done them. Because there's a lot to say about each one.
It's a nice extra, and maybe we can link to it directly in the show notes. But we go through them all. So if you're feeling the lack of Doctor Who on Christmas Day, as many of us do, because it's now apparently a New Year's show. We have a New Year's special coming up.
It's on Sundays, and they're New Year's specials. It's something.
But for some people, Doctor Who is all about Christmas. So go listen to that episode. We'll talk you through all the Christmas that you can handle. But in the meantime, let's talk about last week, or last time on Pull to Open. We went to the Green Death. And Pete, apparently maggots are not popular on social media.
As it turns out, what a shock. Yeah. So not our most viewed video ever was the one about the maggots, shockingly. Although people did love the plot summary. But once we threw in some Pertwee disguises, we got some response. Everybody loves seeing John Pertwee ham it up with a false mustache and a terrible Welsh accent.
Really, I think what this is telling us is that before Jodie leaves, she too has to do some cross-dressing, as Pertwee does in The Green Death.
I suddenly picturing Jodie Whittaker with Groucho glasses for some reason.
I'm thinking a mustache. I think it has to be and then that seems, this is why we should do Christmas episodes, because it would not seem out of character to do something jovial in Christmas like that, like putting on a fake mustache.
Exactly.
And,
I think Stephen Moffat once said he deliberately goes way over the top in all of his Christmas episodes simply because he thinks he's competing with Christmas Day. He's literally competing with like the festivities. So it's just, he has to make it amp up the craziness.
Yeah, your competition is literally the drunken haze that everyone in the living room is in, and everyone talking at once. It's, that's a lot to shout over, but Doctor Who does it very effectively. Anyway, so The Green Death wasn't popular, but here we are at midnight, and we both have theories about why the randomizer might have taken us here.
Yes.
Mine's
pretty straightforward.
Well, we'll get to that, but first it's the part of the show that I'm dreading.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought it up then, so I doesn't have to look like I'm sticking something in you and twisting the knife. It is now time. We've gotten to it in record time, I think, for TLDW, which is too long. Doctor Who, too long. Didn't watch. Whatever you think it means, but it is the time when we summarize the plot of the episode in what I think is record time.
Yeah.
So how we do these is that for every roughly 25 minutes, which is an old episode of an episode of old classic Doctor Who, we give 30 seconds. So for most New Who episodes, we're giving a full minute. Okay, and so this is New Who. This is a David Tennant episode. It is midnight. Did we say that? Did we already say that?
I don't think we said that it was a Tennant episode. It's also I should mention, just to stall for time, the fact that I mea culpa. I said last time that it was a Moffat episode. It is not. It is Pull to Open's first ever episode by a writer called Russell the Davies, I think is the name. And so it's the randomizer's first taste of RTD.
Yeah, it was fun writing the show notes for this one, and where writer and showrunner were the same person.
Indeed.
So yes, it's an RTD. It's an RTD episode. He apparently wrote in a weekend.
He did. I've got all the details on the writing of it. But let's get this painful thing over with.
All right. Yes, there's lots to go over in this one. As straightforward as it is, but let's first talk about what the heck happened here. Are you ready, Chris?
I am ready.
All right,
Count me down.
In 3, 2, 1, and go, sir.
Okay, so the Doctor's on vacation on this planet made of diamond, and Donna wants to stay in and sunbathe, and the Doctor goes in a space bus, the Crusader 50, in which there's a bunch of people there, and they're going out to look at diamond caverns, but the shields have to be down in the meantime. And he meets a lot of people, including a woman named Sky Silvestri, who, when the bus stops and gets attacked by a mysterious creature that we never see, Sky Silvestri is taken over by this creature, and it starts to do this really annoying thing of talking at the same time as everyone, repeating everyone first, then talking at the same time as everyone, and then sort of latching onto the Doctor and repeating everything he says only, and then saying stuff ahead of him, and the passengers get super paranoid. They're about to throw the Doctor out, but the flight stewardess recognizes certain things that the Doctor has said in French and Italian, so she grabs Sky Silvestri and throws her out into the irradiated nightmare outside the ship.
Time.
And that's it. I mean, that's pretty much it. It goes back to Donna. I mean, that's
there's a hug.
There's a hug with Donna. Donna doesn't get to say molto bene. That's it.
That's right. She's not allowed to repeat it anyway. Yeah.
Molto bene.
Good stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Oof.
Way to go. We're almost on a streak here of successful TLDWs.
I know, not to amp up the pressure for next time.
I know.
But...
Oh yeah, that's right. I screwed myself.
You got to continue the streak, Pete.
I do.
It's not to me, but yeah. So this was a 2008 episode. It's kind of, well, I'll just say what RTD says about it in the updated edition of, or I guess also the original edition of the Writer's Tale. Okay. He says he's worried that it's a thin conceit. So, did you feel it was a thin conceit, Pete?
No. I thought this one was great. Honestly, not to reveal my final judgment of the episode, but I thought it was super compelling. I think it holds up really, really well. And I think it's mostly because it's it sort of unfolds in a almost opposite way than most Doctor Who episodes. In that usually the Doctor comes in, slowly but surely wins over the humans or people he's there to sort of save. And even though they're sort of killed off one by one, often that, there's usually this escalating, force of good around the Doctor, and that he's going to save everybody, even if they're all dying around him. Whereas this time it more and more falls apart. It just he keeps trying to get everyone together to face this, and it just doesn't work. Nothing works, and until there's the final climax, and you just kind of it feels a weird taste in your mouth, but it because the cast really sells it. Like, I think there was never quite a point. It came close a couple times, but never quite a point where I was taken out of the show by like that. No one would ever say that, you know what I mean? Which often happens in things like this. Certainly in horror movies, that happens a lot. That didn't happen, and I thought, I remember this one, liking this one when it came out, and I liked it just as much, if not more, this time.
It's very much of its era, I think. Did you find that the sense of paranoia felt very 9/11 to me and post 9/11?
Yeah, that's fair. And if you kind of think about what was on contemporary sort of genre television at the time, this was right around when Battlestar Galactica was in probably getting towards the end of its run, and it was getting a lot of sort of kudos and awards. And so there was, exploring darker sides of human behavior and interaction. Certainly Battlestar Galactica, very claustrophobic show throughout. And this is, if there's one adjective for Midnight, it's claustrophobic.
Yeah, and that's you're absolutely right. And that sort of gets at something that I had a little bit of a problem with this time around, which is that they are very ready to throw people out of airlocks. My goodness. Right. It does. I know that it sort of amps up the tension, and you sort of get to believing by the 30-minute mark that they will actually throw the Doctor out. But it gets that pretty damn quickly. They just get super scared, and their paranoia enhances everyone else's paranoia, and it's kind of this feedback loop going on, which feels a little bit like a bygone era. I don't know if we're beyond that, if we're kind of just over that these days. But yeah, that was super post 9/11-y for me.
Yeah, it probably would have fit a little bit post 9/11. Probably would have fit better almost in a classic series episode too, where people are a little more, I don't know, there was more simplistic attitudes, I guess, towards danger in a lot of those classic series episodes. Yeah, I don't know. I think this might have been a little better served. I don't want to say gore, but I would say like the threat is made clear by the loss of the people in the cabin, or the pilots, right?
Yes.
And you also there's one other thing that does happen, which is to say, like, physically, which is to say that the door gets bent. So like you kind of like, this is why I think it's so compelling. You're kind of wondering, well, what's the nature of this creature? Like, it seems both physical and sort of mental or ethereal, and you never get the answer, which I think is actually pretty, in this case, kind of bold. But once those two things happen, you're still a little bit like, what's the threat exactly? Like, you kind of almost want to see something more physical happen to the people there in the cabin to hit home, to justify essentially their paranoia. That's probably one missing thing, but there's no way to really do that without sort of ruining the guessing game you're playing with the creature.
Yeah, it's interesting. So this was deliberately a low budget episode, or an attempt at a low budget episode. I don't think it actually worked out because they had to build a complex set for the for the main cabin. But you're right. I did not mention in my summary that the pilots had died, which adds a little sort of extra menace to it, but also they die of extonic radiation, which is the threat. Only ever time we've heard about it in Doctor Who is on this one planet, extonic radiation.
With Artron energy, I'm sure.
Indeed, but they also have that moment where the pilot sees something that we never see, which is very,
and I rewound.
Episode-y. Yeah,
I looked.
Yeah,
they didn't have anything. I wish they'd had just a hint of it. You know what I mean? Like the kind of thing you would have to rewind to see. And arguably, like, everything's twinkling, right? Maybe it was one of those things, but
maybe the fact that you rewound meant that sort of that dialogue did its job to make you unsure of yourself. Did I see anything?
Totally.
I kind of like that. So we shouldn't go much further without giving major props to Leslie Sharp, who is the actress who plays Sky Silvestri, who's the character that's taken over by this creature, because it's all about her. I mean, if she had not done her job well, this entire episode would have collapsed. Yeah, because you have to believe the menace.
Yeah, and really well cast. I mean, just her look, honestly, like her eyes. Like it's so much. She has to say so much with her eyes in so many scenes.
She's really good at that.
Well, she's got great eyes.
Yeah,
like,
she's
number
got great
one.
eyes.
Like they're big, but she's clearly knows how to be so expressive. She's very like she makes so many good choices about her before she's taken over and after. There's this interesting dialogue that I honestly didn't. I'll confess I didn't pick up on in an explicit way. I actually watched the DVD commentary, and she's a little weird and she's a little off, and she's clearly the most vulnerable from a emotional perspective. And in the commentary, Davies explains, or in the way he explains things, which is to say, maybe this is the thing. It's not in the story, but maybe she's suicidal, which is to say, she mentions at one point before she's taken over, I'm on a schedule. And why would you be on a schedule? You're on vacation, and this is a thing this is a craft that goes out in some valley somewhere, and you don't really know. Well, you might know when you're coming back, but it's like, I don't know why you'd be on a schedule here. So maybe she was planning to
kill herself. Yeah.
On the what was it called? The Waterfall of Sapphires.
I mean, not a bad place, I guess, if you're going to do it. But yeah, it is interesting. She should be going back to the Pleasure Palace, but she's had this breakup where her girlfriend / partner has moved to another galaxy. So she's definitely fragile. So she has to play fragile. But then she has to do this extraordinary thing after repeating everything everyone's saying, which is super freaking annoying and definitely makes you feel like there are kids in the room, and you're kind of worried at that point that kids are going to watch this and then just be insufferable, right, for the next hour. They're going to repeat everything. But then there's the extra twist of she starts saying stuff at the same time as everyone. And this, just from a technical standpoint, required, I believe there were multiple, teleprompters set up in front of her so that she could read everyone's dialogue at once when they were all talking at once.
Yeah.
And then
I think something like that, yeah.
But it's mostly her and David Tennant having to say stuff at the same time. So they had to practice like crazy. Like that was the most effort in this episode. And Tennant has said that the absolute worst part of that, the part that they just, spent days getting right, was saying the square root of pi, I think, to 30 digits.
Something like that, like 20 or 30 digits.
They have to say it at exactly the same time. So they have to be looking at each other's faces. They have to be following when they're breathing. Like, you have to watch the mouths. I mean, it's super complicated acting, and she makes it look easy.
Right. And I think Tennant even says in the commentary that he did the memorization over breakfast one time, and he thought, okay, I've got this. But then he realizes that it not only does he have to say it, he has to say it at the exact same timing with the exact same tone and the exact same intonation. And they do things to cheat some of that, like certainly in the sort of reverse shot scenes, like the person who's in the foreground is not doing it, like they're miming and they're looping it in later, and then there was a lot of sound editing in post, and that you could tell like of making that work. And but it's like as sort of a technical stroke of genius that they pulled off here, again, like the hats off to it. And it's again one of those things you rewind for, because there's the bit where she switches from being slightly behind them to being like at the exact same time, and it sounds like because you're kind of listening for it, but then you're like, oh, she's not saying anything, and then you're like, wait a minute, she was saying it, and you rewind. Well, maybe she wasn't. Did they miss it? Nope. It's all in there.
It sounds like a Doctor Who audio effect because we're so used to monsters in Doctor Who that sound like they're kind of double tracked, right?
Right, exactly.
So you think it's that at first because your Doctor Who brain is attuned to that kind of noise. But before we leave,
it's such a simple idea. Honestly, this is what really it works so well. Like, I mean, it's obviously was much more complex to execute than I think probably Davies thought, but they pulled it off. But the whole idea of like it's terrible, it's terrifying in this instance, but like, why does it affect us at all? And I sort of started thinking about this, and aided a little bit by the commentary, which is that if you repeats something, like why is it annoying in the first place, and why does it bother us so much? Is it's kind of taking the power away from your words, because there's something inherently mocking about just repeating what someone just said.
There's something inherently mocking about repeating what someone's just said. Sorry.
Nailed
Now at the same time. No. I just want to say something before we leave Leslie Sharp. I think Leslie Sharp is one of the reasons why it's super creepy that the randomizer brought us here. Because, this is going to be a story about my first point of contact with RTD, but it's so not name dropping because he is talking to literally everyone on Instagram right now. But anyway, Leslie Sharp was Rose, the first Rose.
Oh.
Did we know there was a first Rose? There was a show that Russell T Davies did called Bob and Rose in 2001. Interestingly enough, it didn't get a lot of attention because it was it basically was on against 9/11. In the schedules.
I was going to blame Bob.
No, so it didn't get all the attention that it should have done, but it did win lots of awards. It was a lovely romantic comedy, and Leslie Sharp played Rose in that. By the way, again, we didn't yet mention that Billie Piper is seen on the screen mouthing doctor, but should have put that in the
there were a pair of roses in this episode.
There were a pair of roses in this episode. It's fantastic. And Russell T Davies.
Again, bro.
That was almost at the same time, and entirely accidental, which is spooky. Anyway, so RTD is doing this thing on Instagram where he's going through all of the shows that he's participated in.
Right.
So I think it's his 30th anniversary of writing for TV. So he's doing 30 shows that he's been part of. And one of them was Bob and Rose. And that one I commented because he said that it was now on BritBox and it's not on... I couldn't find it on BritBox, so I commented.
Not on American BritBox.
Yeah, turns out there is a difference, which now I know. This is only a recent thing that BritBox has launched in the UK as well. So he responded to me almost instantly. It was like the original comment, and then with the next comment, saying, oh, okay, sorry about that. XX.
Let me make some calls, Chris.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can watch Bob and Rose on BritBox and you're in the US, you are welcome. Anyway, I've been longing to see that. But the fact that the randomizer would then, in our next episode, take us to the only Doctor Who story with Leslie Sharp in it, with a pair of roses, for its first RTD story, kind of feels a little spooky, right? A little weird.
Yeah, that's a very compelling and elaborate theory as to why the randomizer brought us here, and totally blows mine out of the water, because I was just like, well, we were in the Green Death, where one of the key plot elements is a sapphire crystal, and this one is about a mountainside that has a diamond mountainside that has sapphire crystals coming down a waterfall. I'm like, sapphires, yeah. That's what it was. It's just like jewelry.
I like that. When I saw you say that in our notes before the show, I was like, oh yeah, that's actually a great connection with the Green Death. This is like Metabilis 3, but cheaper.
We don't have to pay for any sapphires, even fake ones.
The cheapness of this episode cannot be underrated, and I want to talk briefly about one of Donna's 2 appearances in this episode, which is right at the beginning.
Right.
You see her holding a purple handset, which is supposed to be a phone, but no one had even told her that it was supposed to be held the other way around, because you can see at the bottom of it, it's clearly got a little, whatever those pre-Ethernet jack things were. Phone jack.
I think they're just called a phone jack.
Yeah, it's just
want to get really technical.
And you can see it quite clearly. And she's only in this for like 2 freaking scenes. Maybe by this point.
No, they hand an actress a phone. She's just going to hold it how it's like supposed to be held. Like she's not
her fault. Not her fault. Catherine Tate, I would not blame you for anything, especially as she was filming Turn Left at the same time, which is the true glory. And of course, Midnight is kind of forgotten these days, but Turn Left is adored.
It's kind of weird because like the handset, I mean, I guess they must have painted it, because I don't think there's that many purple handsets. So like, I kind of like, why would you even do that? Like, it feels so much like an afterthought. Like,
It
if
does
you're
look.
going to do a
It looks very
future-
British. I gotta
yeah,
say.
if you're going to do a future, like honestly, that's the moment that probably takes you out of the episode the most because
Yes.
it's clearly like a handset, and
Yeah.
you couldn't just go to the prop vault and just grab the nearest thing from the last sci-fi thing. Like, it just stuns me that no one thought like we should make this look a little more futury.
Yeah.
That's very
Or
weird.
just stick like a freaking bindi on the side of her head and have her press it, like, make it like some sort of future phone thing that they've all been issued with in this spa. But yeah, that's not aged well. Definitely takes you out the episode.
Yeah. But what are you going to do? But I
Yeah.
did like the hotel stuff. I mean, in other words, like I like kind of the idea that there's like a pleasure palace in a like super inhospitable place. Like it just sounds really a little bit like aristocratic and like this is what rich people in the future do. I'm almost a little surprised the Doctor and Donna kind of wanted to come because it seems like this kind of thing that is such a vanity project. Let's just put something here.
I kind of like that. It kind of seems like just a crap tourist location,
Right.
which is sort of the origins of it. Like RTD wanted a space bus, like not a space train. Like we don't get the glitz and glamour of Mummy on the Orient Express.
I was just thinking, yeah.
Right?
Or the Titanic. Yeah. He actually
It's
even
a
says in the
bus.
commentary, this is kind of a reaction to Voyage of the Damned, which was that super ritzy, that was the metaphor, right? It's all Titanic's always a metaphor, but it's like the metaphor for the class system of being like, oh, this is like a vanity project for some space billionaire. But this is, I guess, kind of the opposite, even though you would think it's like super like a very hard thing to do and putting a hotel here in this very inhospitable planet.
I kind of like it because it's the kind of thing where you imagine that the marketing would just sell it, but then you get there and it's just not as great as you think it's going to be, and they're just sort of these crappy bus tours. And you'd rather just do what Donna does and just do some sunbathing under this vast glass dome, which is a little sad, come to think of it. But yeah, the Doctor's like, oh yeah, cool, brilliant. Yes, I'll go on this crappy bus tour. But you can imagine the brochure, can't you? That it's like, take her to a planet of diamonds. Don't just this holiday season. Don't just give her a diamond. Take her to an entire planet of diamonds. And then you get there, it's like, crappy space bus. We have to put the blast shields down because extonic radiation. We're not even going to show you anything for 4 hours, and you're going to watch this terrible in-flight entertainment. By the way, that was another point that took me out of the episode, is where the hostess puts on all the entertainment at once, and then just sort of leaves it. And I know that's a commentary on how crap the entertainment is on, planes or whatever, modern transit world, or the modern transit world of the before times. I don't know if you remember planes, Pete, but yeah, they have crappy in-flight movies, and the Crusader 50 has super crappy in-flight stuff because it has like, I think it's Eurovision.
Yeah, I don't know what that was. It takes you out of the episode, because it's just ridiculous. Like, you would never do that in any flight anywhere. Just have a thing on and have the audio on, right? Like you might have something on at the. You would need to give people the option to just kind of be in their own bubble.
They just passed out headphones as well, so I don't get it.
Yeah,
but it's obviously a way for the Doctor to shut it down so that everyone can get talking, which is kind of you have to get there. I understand it was a script that was written in a great hurry. By the way, Pete, I don't know if you've read The Writer's Tale, but I highly recommend it because the insight that you get into writing episodes like this. Because for those who don't know, The Writer's Tale is Russell T Davies emails back and forth with Doctor Who magazine writer Benjamin Cook, and it's mostly season 4 of the new show, which is what we're in. And for me, it's interesting because these were episodes that I think kind of suffered. And I don't know if it was sort of that it was RTD's last season and he was kind of running on fumes, or the more I read The Writer's Tale, the more I suspect that some of the more dubious choices are kind of, it feels like he knew he was being observed the whole time in the script writing process, and that changed his writing a little bit. I kind of get that sense with the shooting.
So like he had more freedom early on with season 1 and 2, you think?
Well, Ben Cook is definitely lathering on the praise with a trowel for everything that RTD writes. And I wonder if that... And RTD sort of exhibits the classic kind of, oh, really? Oh, do you think so? Kind of thing that writers do, because we're all super, neurotic about our own work. So I think that maybe, it just didn't give him enough time to do redrafts or enough of an impetus to redraft his own stuff.
And you think that would have fixed things like the in-flight entertainment and bits that were like, I hear what you're saying. It's definitely a contrived thing to get the Doctor to get everyone talking. You could have sort of, I think with a few more drafts, figured it out so that everyone was in their own bubble, and that wasn't fun either. And then he could do something very similar to get them out.
Or maybe you introduce the threat earlier, and the power goes out, and that takes out all the in-flight entertainment, and then the Doctor's like, oh, we should talk. We have to talk now. Let's to keep everyone's spirits up, instead of having what you end up with, which is like they're all super chummy for the first half of the episode, right?
Yeah.
Which makes this contrast that, when things turn 180 degrees, I think you believe it a little bit less because of that chumminess. But if they were all terrified to begin with and the Doctor's just trying to talk them down, maybe that would be more believable when they eventually start to throw them out the airlock. Maybe,
but I kind of didn't have a problem with them being chummy, because some are more chummy than others. Obviously, Jethro's very like, whatever, I'm just going to be my emo kid self and not do much, who actually ends up being like way more interesting than a lot of the other people, in that he sort of can pick up on things really, really quickly. He's like very smart about picking up on who the Doctor is, or at least something's wrong with the Doctor.
You can definitely tell that this was a script written in a hurry just by looking at the names.
Yeah.
I mean, Biff is the guy who takes the lead in throwing the Doctor out the airlock. Really? Biff?
But I didn't mind. I thought the chumminess actually worked, in that they were chummy and then not, in the sort of idea of like you're showing your true colors now, because now, like, the stakes are higher, lives are in danger. And the chumminess was really just more to sort of add some sort of dimension and character to everybody, so we just kind of like got to know them and care a little bit.
That's true. And it does set you up for this thing that the Doctor does seem to do throughout space and time, which is just he makes friends everywhere he goes.
Right.
Which is, the more I think about this episode, the more chilling it gets that this doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all it ultimately ends up kind of being a mislead, right? Like, kind of what we're getting at. Like, this is going to be a by the numbers Doctor episode, and you'll figure it out by the end. And again, like I said earlier, it just doesn't happen. The complete opposite happens. It all falls apart. Everyone turns against him, pretty much everyone. And then it takes the smart people. Well, actually, it takes the smarts of Jethro and Dee Dee, and the sense of duty from the stewardess, the hostess, to who
doesn't even get a name, by the way. She doesn't get a name.
Oh, that really hits you. That's what it's just like that. Almost like if I was doubting the episode, that kind of put it over the top emotionally for me, where I was, what was her name? And nobody knew. It's just like, just gets you.
Yeah, because we don't. But yeah, it's interesting. There's definitely something else going on there with the way that everyone gets paranoid at that point, which makes you think that this monster is manipulating motions in other ways, because all of a sudden Professor Hobbs is shouting at his assistant Dee Dee. Professor Hobbs, played by David Troughton, but he's suddenly shouting at her that her work is average at best.
I know.
Everyone just turns nasty.
Yeah, it's almost like he was dying to say that or something. Like it's been something he's been keeping in. I like that, because I think David Troughton, who by the way is great and has also played King Peladon back in the day.
Yeah, he was in War Games.
Son of Patrick Troughton.
Yeah.
Although the director, Alice Troughton, no relation apparently. There's a moment I actually thought, actually wrote in my notes, I had to go back and check it. There's a moment in the commentary where Tennant seems to call David Troughton her uncle, but I think he's just joking, like, oh, you guys, like, that's his way of saying you guys have the same last name, because she basically says no relation a minute later. But I felt like his mannerisms earlier, and again, I think this speaks a lot to the cast and the good choices they make. I mean, they sort of have a dark side. Like he's very paternalistic to Dee Dee. He's like, "Don't bother the man," and he's a little bit dismissive of her. And you kind of chalk it up. He's just sort of an old guy or whatever. But it's clearly masking some darker side to him that comes out when everything becomes a crisis, and that happens with everyone. I believed it less with the couple, the Jethro's parents. I forget their names, but
Val
they
and
were.
Biff.
Yeah, that was it. They just kind of. There's not much there when they're chatting. They're just fun people, just everyday tourists. It seems like, and then suddenly they're like, okay, we're leading the charge on anti-doctor party here, and we're just going to make sure he's thrown out.
Yeah. Biff, as one-dimensional as he is, definitely makes me think of in the UK we'd say a Daily Mail reader, or like a guy who drives a white van. In the US we might think of him as maybe the kind of guy who would watch Fox News. Definitely get that sense that he's like, his pump is primed for paranoia, and like he's very, very common sense kind of dude.
Yeah,
he might be, but common sense in a way that would make him fall for online conspiracy theories.
What did you think? I guess we've seen this before, but did you feel that the air host or the hostess was going to make such a difference at the end? I mean, you kind of almost annoyed with her early on because she seems so oblivious to the in-flight entertainment. That's super annoying. She seems a little bit like annoyed with the doctor, and that you kind of don't like her because, well, we like the doctor, so maybe we're not supposed to like you. And then she ends up saving the day at the end.
Yeah, she's not really developed enough, is she, for that? I mean, she has to be undeveloped somewhat so that people don't actually know her name. I get the point of that line. But yeah, we could have had something more out of her. Like, she's obviously wrestling with her question of duty and safety, duty of care to her passengers. We don't get much insight into that because there's not a lot of space for it, which is unfortunate. And it's interesting that I didn't remember any of the details of this episode. Like, I just knew that there was a bunch of stuff going on inside a ship. Right. And it was a little bit creepy. And I didn't remember any details till I watched it again, so it kind of flattens out in the memory. But yeah, she could have been so much more, and it's kind of a shame. By the way, she does also say several times, was it ladies and gentlemen and variations thereof?
Right.
Which is very... I wouldn't say that that's ahead of its time, right? It's very 2008 that you could still sort of make a joke about that. It's not like making it. It's almost saying, and alien versions, haha. Which, by the way, it's weird that there were no aliens, right?
Isn't it?
Because then they're all human and they're very much dressed in 21st century, early 21st century, late 20th century gear, which is weird. And they sort of realize that the Doctor isn't human at one point, or they
seem surprised.
Suggest. Yeah,
and, there's no blue people at all in this one. Yeah, that's honestly like I don't think it ruins the episode, but it is a bit of a nitpick if you're a fan, where you're like, there's also the reference to the galaxy, like someone went to another galaxy, and this sort of, to my mind, pegs it in the far future. And again, there's no date given, so probably is or it could be, but I know some of the guides put this in like the 27th century, and that in Doctor Who world continuity, that seems a little earlier to be galaxy hopping.
Yeah, they just happen to be going through a period of the far future where early 21st century fashions are just out of this world, man.
And I guess people
all
slide
professors.
Slide projectors are all the rage.
Yeah, the professor at one point, which you mentioned, does a whole, basically bores everyone to death with the sort of his discourse on the Planet of Midnight and why it's so incredible. With the slide projector, and he makes Dee Dee do the next slide please thing. Like, we haven't even advanced the point of remote control slide projectors.
And what happened to Google Slides? What's
really?
What's going to happen to all my slides in the cloud? They're all going to have to download them at some point, or just going to lose them all because apparently they're not accessible by in the 27th century.
Yeah,
But
I guess
yeah,
all the money that they meant to spend on these futuristic costumes just went into that amazing phone prop for Donna at the beginning.
But apparently, okay, so other details in this episode, the bus is called the Crusader 50,
Yep.
which is a reference to this being the 50th episode of the new series, which it is not, actually.
It is not. It was the
52nd.
50th one as shot.
Right.
But then they moved it around with Forest of the Dead. No, is it Forest of the Dead? No, Day of the Moon?
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, Silence of the Library and Forest of the Dead.
Forest of the Dead, yeah. So they moved, but it was the 50th to be shot, and that's why it's not called the Crusader 5, which was RTD's original idea. I think he was going for a Galaxy 4 kind of feel. So the space bus was originally called Crusader 5, and then Ben Cook is like, wait a minute, it's the 50th. You have to make it Crusader 50. And RTD's like, great, okay. Which is
I wonder, like, is that a job on TV shows like Doctor Who that like the script's done, the story's here. Now, what are the references we can make to something that happened in the past? Or...
That should be a job, yeah.
Because I want
continuity
that job.
nerd.
I'm in. Guy, Russell, I guess it would be. Yeah, it is Russell again. Russell, I am available with my near encyclopedic knowledge of the show to toss out things you could make reference to in scripts.
Pete, just
throw it out there.
Just DM him on Instagram. He's replying to everyone.
Oh man, I'm in. Yeah, I haven't even tried. I got to do that. But that's an interesting little tidbit on this one. Other couple tidbits, which is the TARDIS is never shown, which is a very rare thing. Actually, it's apparently up until this point it had not happened since Genesis of the Daleks, which makes me want to go back and check that. I haven't, but that sounds wrong, but I guess it's right. I got to trust this one.
Right? You'd think that they, but I guess it's, it's always seen like at the very least on a cliff top or something. And the implication that we've been walking away from it for hours.
Certainly not all of them have the TARDIS interior, but not seeing the police box at all.
Yes.
Very rare.
And it is the first, but not the last, to not feature a monster. I think it was probably done more successfully in Listen, right? That would be the other one.
Yeah, Listen would be definitely one of them. But it's the very first episode not to show the monster. Any episode that has a monster has at some point shown the monster, or at least part of the monster.
Have there been any other, or is it just Midnight and Listen?
That's a good question. I'd have to think. I don't think so. Someone write in. Someone tell us.
But yeah, it's interesting. And again, a decision forced by cheapness, but forces you into an interesting place where you don't see the monster and you have to guess a lot of things about it. I kind of like that.
And I think that's a really good choice. Particularly the reveal when Sky is turned away from them, which is, you're just wondering like what's happened to her, like what's she going to look like? And they really stretch it out, and she sort of very slowly, her hands come away from her head and she starts to turn, and it's like painfully long, like what? And then she just looks up, and you're kind of almost looking for it, right? Like, are those her eyes? No, those are her eyes. You're like, there's no contacts, there's nothing, there's no scar.
Well, she's certainly there. And it's again the wonderful acting here by Leslie Sharp, that the only way something is different is that she's gone from lamenting her life and being the most miserable passenger on board to something almost like a smile, but it's malevolence.
Yes,
I think is the word for it, that she conveys so well with just a look.
Yeah, she does it incredibly well. And so this is such a tight little episode, very simple in idea, that it was actually adapted into a stage play.
Yes, in Australia, I believe.
So I'd love to see it. Like, I mean, that's probably over now, but I could see why they did it. It's definitely conducive to it. How did they do the words, right? Like the sound editing was so on point for this. I guess in a stage play without the ability to rewind, you can't, and a little more forgiveness on the part of the audience, you could just kind of go with it. But I got to say, that must be like I'm sure, incredibly nerve-wracking to a cast that they got to not just memorize these lines, but just really be on point with the syncing with your castmates on stage. That would be very.
I mean, whoever plays the Doctor and whoever plays Sky really have to rehearse the crap out of it, right? More than anyone else put together. And if they do that, if you get those two actors to rehearse like crazy every day, which you kind of have time to do for a play more so than a TV show, right? So I could see that working and being kind of chilling in a theatre setting. If they have it down so they can just say the numbers of pi, the square root of pi to each other, that would send a chill through the audience.
Well, you have some license to get, adapt things differently for the stage. So they could instead do a recipe for pi. Throwing that out there.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what he says. It's nice that it adds stuff like, you're a very handsome doctor. Oh, thank you, I am. Which is a perfect thing for Tennant's doctor in particular to say, because he is a little vain. It's kind of a continuing thing with his doctor.
Indeed.
But yeah, you're right. It could be anything as long as they get it in sync. I'm kind of thinking of like the Everly brothers here, and it's also a trick that Simon and Garfunkel copied from the Everly brothers, which they were able to watch each other's mouths so constantly that they were perfectly in sync when they were singing, so that it almost sounded like it was one voice singing. But it is a thing you can do on stage if you're attuned enough to another person's mouth. So you can just get that perfectly in sync with them that it sounds harmonious. Someday
I'll get there, Chris.
Someday we'll get there. Do you think, by the way, one last word on the words and the use of the repeating words, do you think that this episode would scare a child, or might be designed to scare a child out of doing the word repeating thing?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I think it would actually probably inspire them to do it because...
Well, that's the thing. It's like, should we recommend this as a thing to put on? If your kid is doing the annoying thing of repeating everything you say, if they're going through that phase, should you put this on? Because it is a little bit chilling at the end when Donna does it and the Doctor's like, no, don't.
Yeah.
Just don't.
Well, I'll say this. I watched this episode as I'm doing lately with my son. He's 12 now. So he's a little past, repeating. And I don't think he was that freaked out by it. He's seen it before. But he liked it. He liked the idea. He's obviously, as a kid, probably much more around, or at least close to, in terms of time, that idea of repeating being kind of a thing. I might try it with my 8-year-old at some point if she ever sort of gets into Doctor Who and lets me watch him with her. I think she'd be freaked out by it. I think she probably, if she were a repeater, she'd probably take a break for a bit. But then in the same vein as like, the Daleks say exterminate, and that's cool and fun to say.
Even if it's a little scary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kids
so maybe
ultimately want to provoke a bit, right? They want to have an impact on the world around them because they're just starting to figure that out. And if they can, which is, I think, why they do this in the first place. Like when they're really young and they think repeating, and it gets a rise out of somebody. And that's ultimately what they want to do. They want this attention, which might indicate a little bit about maybe the alien is more of a child here.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But one that learns fast. And maybe it would inspire your child to go to the next level and try to sync up with what you're saying. So maybe it would just take that urge and point it in a more creative direction.
Nice. If they did that, I would give them a raise in their allowance.
You heard it here first, kids.
Oh my goodness! I hope they.
You hope they don't listen to this episode.
They can erase this episode. Oh, I've set myself up.
Yeah. Just cut that line out. You'll be fine.
All right.
We're now just talking about something that never happened.
What do you think would have happened here if the evil plot had succeeded?
The Doctor would have been thrown out the airlock.
This is an easy one, right?
Easy. Yeah, because he's only holding on by his foot, and it is a really chilling scene. By the way, the look on David Tennant's face, he definitely sells the notion that this is some of the worst trouble the Doctor has ever been in.
Yeah, he really delivers it.
Yeah.
Like he really looks like he's ill in the last few scenes where he's repeating after Sky and the creature. And it's almost like he's kind of having a stroke, honestly.
Yeah.
Like he's like I'm alive and I have my brain still, but I cannot communicate. I can't say anything to anybody
Which is
to indicate who I am.
The Doctor's worst nightmare, to have his voice taken away. By the way, can I just bring up a plot hole here that I thought of towards the end of the episode? Why does he not use the psychic paper on the passengers?
Oh, like
he's used it,
give him some more authority.
Exactly. He's used it on the driver. He's used it on the engineer. Why not use it on the passengers? Because there's whole
he
10-minute
for
stretch.
A second flashes it to the hostess.
Yeah.
Which might indicate why she isn't as gung-ho to throw him out.
Although she is still suspicious of him for buying his ticket at the last minute. That's the thing that sort of dooms him in her eyes. But yeah, he could have flashed the psychic paper people. I guess you could just say that the Doctor forgets about it. It's part of his hubris that he thinks he can always talk his way out of a situation. He doesn't know he's going to get his voice taken away from him. So, yeah, there you go. I've just solved my old plot hole.
Yeah, there it is.
But if the Doctor is thrown out, that's the end of the Doctor, right? Because you got to figure the extonic radiation would not just exterminate him, but all of his other regenerations.
He couldn't regenerate out of that one. That's a dead for sure. So his time would end right there.
Wouldn't it be so shocking if they just sort of made this the last episode of Doctor Who? And then you could still have turn left.
Right.
Just like a perma turn left.
Right. Oh, wow. Yeah. And then it's kind of like it's suddenly Torchwood Miracle Day forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could happen.
Wow.
That's a dark twist.
But it would be kind of an appropriate way for the Doctor to go if the Doctor had to go.
Well, yeah, it's definitely the lead up to it where all of his power, so to speak, like which is again mostly through words, mostly for himself, his cleverness that he insists he is throughout this episode. I'm clever, and it's not helping you. This is the one time it doesn't work, Doctor, and it's finally your one bad day.
Actually, that would make it a really interesting stage play if you change the ending.
Yeah.
You could surprise people by changing the ending. People who think they know Doctor Who in the theatre, like, no, you don't. Actually, he gets thrown out at the end, and maybe you have some sort of scene with Donna afterwards, or you have some other way of sort of delivering the play's message of like this. This is about the day of the Doctor's ultimate hubris that killed him. Right?
Midnight, aka the end of the Doctor. And then you kind of wonder a little bit about then what does the creature do? What happens? I guess it does it go on switching around and draining people? Can it spread? Can it reproduce? We honestly just don't know enough about it to have any idea. It's hard to even speculate. A comparable story, which very different in some ways, but the claustrophobia is very similar, is The Thing. And in The Thing, you get enough to know like this thing will to have some picture in your head of what happens should it get out of this Antarctic, this claustrophobic environment, which is a good motivator of establishing stakes. Whereas this time it's really more about the people and the Doctor. It's not really about that. It's not really, but so it's less fun to even think about, what would happen if the creature got out? Well, I guess it would just be out and doing this thing.
The multiple human galaxies are terrorized by an epidemic of people repeating other people's words. And
throwing people out of airlocks. But suddenly that becomes a thing. And
if if this did happen, and remember we are in the RTD season where everyone on Earth becomes the master. But if everyone on Earth just sort of started repeating everyone else's lines, I think you would have nuclear war within the week.
Who would be saying the lines though? If everyone's repeating, there's no one actually saying the original line. It'd be half the world have to be like that blood control thing they were doing. I don't know. We're getting a little tangent on the tangent here.
I'm just sort of figuring, the president at his lectern, just repeating the reporters' questions back to them. Sounds kind of Trumpian, like something
totally.
you do.
Where were you? Where were you? Why don't you say? Why don't you say, Mr. President?
Someone should try it. Maybe you get a pull bump out of it. I don't know. Who knows? People seem to like annoying now.
I mean, it would go viral.
It sure would.
All right. So this is a challenge almost. I almost think it doesn't apply, but it might be a challenge for us. Where's Clara? Where's the Clara Splinter in this episode?
Where's the Clara Splinter in the episode? I actually have an answer for you.
You do? Okay.
I think this is a little bit of headcanon that the Clara Splinter handed a novel or something to the stewardess like a few days before this happened. Something, or made her watch a movie or something where she has in her notion, in her head somewhere, the notion of self-sacrifice, right? That it's more prominently the force. So she's more willing to take the creature out of the airlock and save the doctor. That seems to me the sort of, we don't really know why the stewardess decided to save the doctor. Like, it's not entirely clear, especially since she was suspicious of his ticket purchase. But she does it. So that's what's left to be explained, I think. And that's where Clara...
Yeah. I mean, the implication is that she has such a strong sense of duty. But it's just there, right? There's nothing behind it. Like, well, why would you feel that way? Particularly if you are sort of a hostess on sort of a touristy thing in a everyday resort facility, I guess, as we were just describing. So that it's fine as written. It's just like, why would you think that? And there's one line from another passenger during which says exactly that. Like, you're the hostess. You're supposed to protect us, and she's doing it sort of more in a panic and an accusatory kind of way. And you kind of get the impression she's suddenly reminded in that moment, oh yes, that is my duty. That's what I have to do. And I like that
definitely...
your theory provides the fuel for that. Like, it's like she not only, like, there's something about why she joined the job that she's reminded of right before this in a very strong way. And therefore, that enables her to make that sacrifice. I like it. Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Maybe Clara was the Clara Splinter is another hostess. On this bus line. She works on Crusader 49, and they spend a lot of time in the break room talking about what would you do if.
Nice.
She brings up this whole. Yeah. Damn, burned another souffle. Hey, what would you do if there was a monster on your bus? Just thinking.
Yeah. Remember, it's 6 seconds. Remember that. Yeah. Remember the airlock, 6 seconds.
Yeah.
I don't know why you need to know, but you should know that.
Sort of feels important.
Yeah.
All right. I think we may have talked midnight to death.
It's definitely past midnight. Dang.
It is time.
Well, is it? Hold on. Did you like this one? Was it a Dalek?
Oh yeah,
it's a Dalek for me.
I think it gradually became a Dalek for me. I think that initially it was kind of an overrun because I got to the end of it and I was like, is that it? And I've kind of initially agreed with RTD's thin conceit worry. But the more I've thought about it, especially this notion that it sort of gets at the Doctor's hubris and his sort of belief that everyone can be his companion. And it kind of reminded me of Night of the Doctor, which we were just talking about a few episodes back along with Day of the Doctor.
Yeah, sure.
Which is maybe the only other time in the Doctor's history that this happens. Although it did also happen in the God Complex. And actually, come to think of it, the randomizer is taking us through a lot of episodes that involve companion insecurity. right?
true.
Because God Complex had that, and had the whole issue of Amy and Rory, you're not leaving, I fired you, or something, and that sort of the Doctor running away from Joe and from that situation and being super jealous of losing Joe and the end of the Green Death. This definitely, we're seeing a theme here. So I like that. The more that I've thought of this, was a slow burn for me because it kind of sat in my brain for a day, and the more I thought about it, the more a Dalek stalk sprouted out of its head. So it became a Dalek for me.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear. As I was thinking about it in the context of other episodes we've done, I tend to think episodes with lower stakes, I have a greater chance of working. Like when you set yourself up for all of time and space, or the whole galaxy, or the Earth Empire, or whatever being destroyed, it's almost too abstract. But I really like some of those work, but a lot of them fall short. Whereas things like the Androids of Tara, for example, and I would say even the God Complex, which I found very interesting, and this one, where it's really the stakes are certainly much more local, but also have more to do with the fundamentals of the characters we tune in to watch every week, and challenge those things. I think they're really, really, really good. So this one, it definitely, I liked it the first time. I liked it this time. And I liked researching it, thinking about it more this time, particularly like, that was a scare and that was interesting. Just as you said, getting at the Doctor and who he is and how he tends to get through episodes and completely flipping that around. Very compelling idea.
Definitely. Perhaps a buried gem sitting so near to Turn Left as it does.
Buried gem sliding down the hillside of the waterfall. I see what you did there.
I set that one up for you, Pete.
Bam.
But speaking of challenging, we, before we activate the randomizer, do we want to issue the randomizer with a challenge?
Yes, we do, and I'm going to say it. Give it to me, guy. I want an ironic twist. I want something like, last week was Christmas? Well, here's your Christmas episode pulled open.
Yeah.
How do you like that? Or wait a minute, it's Christmas in July, or I don't know, something like that.
I'm going to issue it the challenge of give us another RTD episode. I feel like we need something to compare this against. And there's so much RTD in Who history that we haven't gone to yet.
That works.
So
I like it.
I'm feeling good about my chances.
Me too. Once again, everyone, this is the randomizer we're talking about. In case you're new to Pull to Open, this is the thing we turn to tell us where we're going in the whole Doctor Who mythos.
And something very special and new about the randomizer this week. We have our codex, which is the list of complete Doctor Who stories that we want to watch as discrete stories, slightly different from the official list.
It's in the show notes.
All in the show notes. You can check it out yourself. But until this week, it had the number 297 as the latest number that we could go to. And it is now 298 because Flux is over.
Boom.
Flux is in the books.
Wow.
Flux is officially a story.
It's officially here.
I got to ask you, Pete, did you catch up? Did you watch it?
I'm only no. If we roll 298 on our 298 sided die here, I will be watching it for the first time. Yes, okay. I mean I've seen the first two episodes, so I've seen the Sontaran episode, and I'll certainly save my thoughts for when we talk about it. But I'm only a third of the way into Flux, watching it for the first time.
You've just given me my idea for the most awesome Christmas present ever. Is it 298 sided die?
I think that the 3D printer might explode when you put in that many sides.
We should figure out how large that would be. But it had to be room sized, basically.
How would that look any different from a ball?
The advantage is it would have to be so large that we could print the episode name on
Right.
on each side.
Just rolling it would take months.
Yes.
Like, when's it going to stop rolling? I don't know.
To throw it down a crystal waterfall. Yeah.
It's
Anyway,
the only way you can roll it.
we do not use 298-sided die. Rolling
No,
down
what do
crystal
we use,
waterfalls.
Chris?
We use random.org because computers are terrible at doing random numbers. They basically use an algorithm to guess at a random number, but random.org uses true randomness by listening to atmospheric noise. Which is so doctorish that we had to use it for our randomizer adventure.
As true as it gets.
I have entered the number 1 as its minimum and 298 as its maximum in random.org for the first time.
Outstanding. I have unlocked the codex. It is now ready for input.
We need Android noises in the background as this happens. Some kind of whirring and clicking and
oh man,
clanking.
That's a feature
Actually,
upgrade.
You know what I was thinking the other week? We should just put the TARDIS wheezing noise in the background as we do as we count down to the random.org.
Do you care to order any other sound effects?
Yeah. Sorry, that's my impression of a TARDIS with the handbrake on.
Let's do this thing.
All right,
give
ready?
You a countdown.
Yep.
In 5, 4, 3, 2, and now.
93.
93. We're early.
Sounds
we are
familiar.
at the Image of Fendal.
Ooh.
Very nice.
That is a complete black box to me. That's Baker?
Yeah, it's Tom Baker. This actually follows the Invisible Enemy. It's right after it. So we did Invisible Enemy quite some time ago. That was like one of our first episodes.
That was our last actually not random episode, I believe.
Right. That was before we installed the randomizer into the podcast.
Exactly. So it's taken us back. It's taken us home.
Yeah.
In an ironic twist.
Totally.
So I guess I listened to you.
It delivered. Yeah, Image of Fendal. I remember this one being super creepy. So
it's in the mood for creepy.
Yeah, that's that. The creepy continues. And not as much gross creepy as we had with the Green Death. So yeah, that's
right.
Great.
I like it, and it's listened to our complaints about the God Complex, which was that it was not creepy enough.
True,
and it's taking us further ever into the center of Gothic horror.
Totally, Tom Baker, always a treat. This is a good time for Baker and a good time to listen to Pull to Open. So thank you all for doing that. In case you weren't sure, we are a podcast. So if you haven't yet subscribed to the program, please do. It only takes a second to hit that button. It also only takes a second to leave us a review or a rating. You can give us whatever kind of review you would like. We really like those 5-star reviews, and they really do help us with our placement on services like Apple. So we really would love it if you could leave us a review. But whatever you're listening on, Spotify, Google, Breaker, Stitcher, whatever you're listening, if your service is able to take your review, please leave one. We'd really, really appreciate it. And we'll read your review out on the air at some point. Please follow us on social media. We are always on TikTok. We're all over TikTok. We're on top of TikTok like weird creatures in a diamond planet are on innocent, hapless passengers that want to turn on each other.
We're on TikTok like David Tennant on Leslie Sharp dialogue.
Yeah.
We are in sync with TikTok.
Absolutely. We're at Pull to Open on TikTok, and we're also on Twitter and Instagram, putting stuff on those channels as often as we can, and that's at Pull to Open 63. We will see you here next time for Image of Fendal, and have a happy new year.
And we will see you here next time for Image of Fendal, and have a happy new year.
All right, guys, take it easy.
Bye.